My son and I drive out to visit a farmer who sells vegetables at the farmer's market, as well as heritage, quote-unquote, humanely raised pigs and chickens.
From the time they get here until the first day to their last day, we want to do best by the animals, and that last day for us is very, very important. I mean, we are attached to the animals, but they have a purpose. On the last day, a lot of people will send them off to a slaughterhouse. So they're in strange environments, they're pushed onto a truck. It's oftentimes they don't necessarily want to go on the truck, so there's a lot of coercion involved. So we feel it's very important for the animals to have a good ending. And so they live here in this pasture, that's their hut. The last day we build a little enclosure so they're on fresh grass. We get them in there, feeding them, I'm with them, petting them, talking to them so that they're comfortable. And then they're stunned so that they're knocked unconscious. And it sounds a little counterintuitive, but it's actually done with a bullet. But the bullet doesn't kill them. It just knocks them out because their skull is so thick that the bullet doesn't penetrate. And then as soon as they're unconscious, then their jugulars are cut and they bleed out, and then they pass. And at that point, then we move on to the butchering. We try to do it in quick succession. The first few, they don't know what death is. They don't know, they've never experienced anything but friendliness from us. So, may feel like deceptive, but so they're more curious. Like when the first one goes down, the other ones are kind of like what's going on, and they want to. Most of the time, they want to play, and they're playful. So they come over and they want to play with their sibling who's gone down. We pull them out, and then give them some time as we move the animal up to the barn, and then come down and do the next ones. So by the last one or two, they've caught on that there's something going on, and that their buddies aren't there anymore. But again, because we try to do it quickly, and we're there for the entire process, I feel that that's very important. We don't breed them here. We breed all of our other animals, so we haven't brought these into the world, but we bring them here when they're weanlings, so that all they really know as an adult farmer is us. So we're there at the very end too.
How old are they, and when did you get them?
Yeah, so they were born in February, late February, early March, on a farm in New York State that does everything on pasture. They're heritage breeds, and they're weaned at 8 weeks, and the mothers wean them naturally. A lot of times, again, the process of farming isn't always the most humane. Some farmers take them off their mother at 3 weeks, and that's way too early. The mother will naturally wean them at around 8 weeks. And so when they're weaned naturally, then we take them and bring them to the farm. And at that point, they're on solid food. So these guys are going on 6 months. So they go from birth to, they're 200, and this guy's about 270-ish, 270 pounds. And they could get up to be, all of them, everybody has like a...
He's got a limp, I know.
Yeah, once they get to be really big, they're carrying a lot of weight, and they don't move so well. He's the fatty of the group, so he lays around a lot. He eats sitting down.
When do you end them?
Based on weight, and you also need what's called a slaughter date. We work with somebody who's a professional. Even though we've been doing this for a while, there's people who it's their job to do every day. The group that we work with has people who come to the farm. That's what they specialize in. We work with them, to put the animals down. So we kind of guess on when they're going to get to the right weight to be good size and have some fat on them, which is healthy, but not too much fat. And that tends to be around 275 pounds. So we pick a date when they first get them, and then hope that we get them to that point, and then that's when we slaughter.
It sounds like they're pretty close to their date since they're at about 270.
Yeah, so they're going to go on November 11th. And actually this year, I told you what we do most of the time. The butcher that we work with lost some employees, so he can only take 4 pigs at a time. The whole process of curing and smoking and cutting meat, it takes him a full week for a set of pigs. That's all he can handle. So this year, November 11th is one date, November 25th is the other. And so what we'll do is the very biggest pigs will go first. We'll just take 3 at first so that there's more for them at the end together. And then the 25th we'll take the other ones. But the other thing that you should know, this is very different than most farms. Most time pigs are raised in a warehouse on concrete, slatted concrete, so they're in their manure, and the manure gets washed through the slats into a big lagoon underneath. That lagoon is constantly outgassing up back into their space. So they're breathing, noxious fumes, and they're inside. If you notice how they're rooting's like using their nose to kind of dig up. That is inbred into them. That's like so like instinctual. If they're raised on concrete, they can't do that. It's like having an itch that you can't scratch your entire life.
Makes them crazy.
Yeah, I kind of talked about it was they get rotated to fresh grass all the time. So you can see like this little enclosure here, they'll be here for a week and a half, and then they get moved to another piece and another piece and another piece. So they have a wheel that we move them around. So they always have fresh grass.
Sounds like a wonderful life for them. But it's sad that it only lasts for 1 year. Do you know how old they would grow if they were not slaughtered? How long they would live?
Well, it's hard because most farm pigs aren't raised unless they're breeders, and even the breeders are kept for maybe 3 years.
Maybe like
I'm
the
guessing
lifespan of a dog, like 15 to 20 years?
Not that long, no. More like 5 to 7. You can see, like even the males get up to 600, 700 pounds. They get really big. They're just kind of laying around eating and sleeping the whole time, which is, it's nice, but
it shortens their lifespan.
To be eating and sleeping all the time?
Yeah.
Yeah, in the wild. And that's the other thing. These are descended from boars. And in the wild, I still think that their natural lifespan would be 3 to 5 years. I don't think you're going to find it much longer than that. They wouldn't be here if it wasn't for the way they integrate into our food system. They're farm animals, so that they couldn't survive in nature. And these particular animals wouldn't be here if we weren't raising them, and we're raising them for meat. So it's ironic that to save a heritage animal and the genetics of a heritage animal, you need to eat it. Otherwise, it's part of an economy. So, I don't know, I'm not being clear, but, it's true of most heritage animals that unless they have a purpose that fits into, the human needs in the food system, that those are going to become extinct. And so the birds that we raise, these buckeyes over here, those are our breeders. And then the australorps that are over there, they're both on the endangered list for heritage breeds. So if we weren't raising them, they would be getting closer and closer to not being around anymore, to being extinct. Because they're a breed that people don't value as much because they don't grow as quickly. And they don't have as much breast meat and all that kind of stuff. So there's a lot of things that it's all tied into the food system and the economy and whatnot.
When I was coming to the farmer's market, I never saw you selling any meat. Maybe I just didn't come at the right time, but...
We bring our chicken every week. It's on our menu.
I saw it on the menu. I just only saw vegetables. I never saw any of
that. So one of the things about heritage animals is that because they're so unique in the sense that they take a long time to raise, they're more expensive. To be honest, we do have a harder time moving our chicken because people aren't used to it.
The price they'd have to pay.
The price. But the thing is that meat has become such a commodity and chicken is such a throwaway item. People have kind of lost touch with the fact that all chicken used to be the chicken that we raised, used to be heritage chicken, and it was the Sunday dinner. It was what, your mom or grandmother would cook for Sunday dinner and you go over it. So chicken was considered a big deal. It wasn't something that you just had, during the week. So chicken used to be a lot more expensive than it is now. It's only because of the factory farming that's become dirt cheap and really a throwaway commodity item.
After these are slaughtered, where do you sell them?
Again, it goes back to our philosophy about the animals. We think it's really important that people eat what's called nose to tail, like not waste anything. So we sell them only as halves and wholes, and also because we think that it's important to have them be slaughtered on farm rather than in a slaughterhouse. The only way that we can sell them legally is halves and wholes. We can't sell cuts, because it's not a U.S. The butcher who does it is a certified butcher, but he processes just for the customer. So if a customer says, I want to have a half a pig, we raise that pig and it's slaughtered here, and then the half of the whole pig goes to the butcher, and then he cuts to order. So if they want so much sausage or their hams to be ham steaks versus a whole ham, he does all that for them. And then they essentially they bought the animal from us, but they're contracting with him for the service. In the USDA plant, everything is done right there, and the customer doesn't have any say in the matter.
So you already have a list of customers that are ready to purchase the halves.
Yeah, they're all sold.
They're all sold already?
Yeah, we have one half that's left. Yeah, we pre-sell everything.
At the farmer's market, you take down people's names and they say that they're interested in purchasing half a pig?
We don't advertise at farmer's market for that. Not that we couldn't. It's just trying to sell the vegetables and all that kind of stuff. It's something that's very different for people. They're used to going to the market and buying a pork chop. They're not used to going down to the freezer and opening up and pulling out something that they had butchered to order. It's more economical because you're buying all your cuts So we sell it at $4.25 a pound, and you go to anywhere else and you're going to buy bacon for $13.50 a pound, and your ham for $8 or $9 a pound for pastured. So if you do it all out, it's a much more economical way for people to get their meat. But like I said, it also teaches people, and it gets them to value what they're doing because they learn what the cuts are. So things aren't wasted. A lot of times people go, all they want is bacon and ham and a pork chop. But what about the shoulder? What about the ribs? What about all the different cuts that otherwise are devalued because it's not the prime cut? So by having people get a heifer whole when they get their meat, even if it's their first time, it's like, oh, here's the shoulder, here's, again, the ribs or the back, and how do I cook that? What do I do with that? And getting them to value and appreciate the whole animal. I mean, if people are going to eat the meat, that we think that they should, one, it's nice that they can see how it was raised, and two, just value the whole thing. By buying halves and wholes, they get to do that.
I have a question about biodynamics, because when I spoke to you about it before, you told me that you've been on farms in which animals were not raised, and you've been on farms in which animals were raised, and you said the quality of the vegetables are better when you have animals on the farm. Did I misinterpret you?
No, what I was saying was that it's a principle of biodynamics, but it's also something that other farmers will speak to, other people I know. The animals work in synergy with the farm. The farm becomes a whole organism, sort of mimicking more the natural system. When you go into the woods, you don't have just trees. You've got deer and raccoons and skunks and snakes and invertebrates, and it's a whole ecosystem. So biodynamics encourages to think of the farm as an ecosystem. Like today, most farms are monocropped farms of some sort. They raise just corn or soybeans or just pigs or just chickens. So instead of having that whole blend where everything works together, where the animals, our pasture when we bought this land was terrible. It was all grown up in weeds, wasn't usable, was starting to come back into brushy trees and things. But as soon as we started to run the animals on it, because the animals were providing nutrients through their manure and also turning the soil, like the pigs are doing right here and the chickens do when they scratch, everything started to improve. So it's not just the manure. I mean, but biodynamics is sort of very esoteric and out there. Mm-hmm. It talks about energy and about spiritual energy and about cosmic energy and about how the animals help bring that together. And again, it's like kind of woo-woo for a lot of people.
Yes,
but
that's what I was thinking.
But I mean, if you start at the basic level and think about the moon and about the lunar cycles, and how you may feel or you may not, but things change depending on where we are in the lunar cycle. Like during the full moon, you talk about lunacy and about how and things, and the animals act differently at night, not just our animals, but about all the wild animals, like the coyotes are out, the foxes are out. But anyway, as far as the farm goes, when there's a full moon, things germinate like so much faster. And what's happening is that everything that is living has water in it, and water is like the tides in the ocean. And the moon, when you have a full moon, the tides are much higher. There's that gravitational pull that's pulling, and so in every cell in your body, you're also experiencing that same lunar effect. The thinking is that with seeds, because it's absolutely I can prove it. If you plant a seed when there's a waning moon, when it's not full, when it's not a rising moon, it takes its normal time to germinate. So like carrots may be 13 or 14 days. Plant that same carrot a few days before a full moon, and it can germinate as quickly as 5 or 6 days. Mm-hmm. So it's like, why? And the only thing that's different and it's very consistent is the moon. So that's an effect that people don't necessarily see or feel because we're so divorced from that. But now then take it extrapolated out. That's the moon. What about planets that are in close proximity to the Earth? What about, everything's exerting influence on each other. To me, it's like kind of out there even more, but the whole idea of astrology and when you're born, where you're born, and how that astrology is all based on the planets and the planetary interactions. So biodynamics is really strongly tied to all that. When there is an interaction when there's animals on a farm, you can take it at different levels. It's a purely biological level of when an animal is urinating and defecating on the grass and their hooves are pushing that in, it stimulates microbial activity, which improves soil life and plant growth. So that's a purely biological thing.
But you're not growing any of the crops here. Are you taking their manure and putting it on the crops?
No, everything that we can harvest, the animal byproducts that are left over when they're harvested, it all goes into the compost and all goes back.
The stuff that you can't sell,
everything
their
goes,
bones and skulls and brains and all that, you put that onto the compost pile.
Yes. So it takes about 6 months to a year, and that's broken back into soil, to compost, and then that's reapplied to the land. No, so what they're doing down here is they're improving the pasture, which becomes better nutrition for them, which makes them healthier, which in turn makes the pasture healthier. So it's like this cycle. So they get apples in the fall, and they just had a bunch of apples today. That's why he's a little bit loose.
The only thing there are three things. The main thing is violence, and it is stealing a life.
Well, violence is inherent in nature. I mean, everything dies, and if something in a natural system, predators kill other animals, and there's violence, if you will, that's violent. And every time there's life and death throughout an ecosystem, and death is, depending on how, what the terminology is, death is inherently violent for the most part, unless you die of natural causes.
Right, but they're not dying of natural causes.
No,
they're dying
but I'm
by
just...
a predator that by physiology and anatomy, humans are not predatory animals. Our whole physiology.
We're herbivores like them.
We're just
Same teeth and
herbivores,
everything.
same
okay.
teeth.
So, again, there's differences of opinion.
It's science. If you look at our anatomy, a tiger or a lion has 20
We've
times.
been hunting since we were on this
No.
this
That's why
planet.
we get cholesterol clogging our arteries and we die of it, just like pigs. If you feed pigs lots of meat, their arteries will clog up and they'll die of a heart attack.
I'm here to
to
explain what we
share.
do
Yeah.
and not to argue about the
So one thing
philosophy
is
of eating.
violence. There are just three things, and I'll be very quick. You're saying violence is part of nature, and I was saying, but it's not our nature. Like, you have to sort of kind of go like, well,
If you
we're
look at most indigenous peoples, they
not according
You
to
don't seem
Dr.
like a violent person, are you?
I'm not, but what I'm saying is that we choose to eat omnivorously, and we choose to raise the meat that we raise everything that we eat for the most part, and we choose to do that in as humane a way as possible. And different people have different philosophies and food choices, and so I respect yours. But this is how we do what we do.
Do you feel under attack now? Do
Came
you
here
want-
to answer your questions about how we
Which
do
you
what we do,
do, yeah.
and not to argue about different people's perspectives.
Are you going to slaughter the animals with them, or you keep them away from that?
Oh, they've been involved in it since they were little kids. Yeah.
Have they slaughtered the animals too?
Even we assist in it, but we don't do it. Like I said, it's very important that it be done perfectly, so it's instantaneous, and it's something that is an acquired skill, and we don't do it enough to be perfect at it.
Mm-hmm.
Every time we do it, we learn, and at some point I might do it, but at this point we're here just to assist.
So you don't shoot the gun.
No.
You told me you did it yourself.
No. Well, we do it like I said, in the sense that
You
we're
don't take it to a slaughterhouse.
right.
But you have it done here on the farm.
Yeah,
But it's
and
not
that
you
we're a part of
yourself
it. That we're not. Well, no, but we're also not hiding up in the house. We're here with the animals the entire time, and one, because I feel that that's important to be part of the cycle, but two, because the animals know me, and also it's also just a lot of work. It's a big process. So
Do your kids have concerns? Like, are they don't feel sad when the animals? Because I'm sure they get to know them.
our kids are grown.
They're already grown up.
Yeah, but when they were, they grew up not on this farm, but on another farm, and we had animals
They got
there
used
too.
to it.
Yeah. Well, it's something that, again, it's like it's part of how we live. Even if you're vegan or vegetarian, if you're just going to the store and buying something that you haven't been a part of, it's a different kind of thing. When you sit at a table and everything that you're eating is something that you've raised from your hands, it feels good to know that. And so the same thing with we don't eat any meat that we haven't raised ourselves. And we don't eat any vegetable. We do eat sometimes in the winter, but for the most part with our greenhouses and whatnot. And we need to buy grains, but everything else we raise ourselves. So the kids grew up on a farm, and from the time they were little kids, were eating carrots out of the ground and herding the cows and sheep. Even my little son, I have this vivid memory of him as a little boy at 4 years old, running naked and this huge cow, just like herding it, this little boy. And he saw that cow, be slaughtered as well. So
there's a wonderful film called Peaceable Kingdom. There's a farmer, Brown, and he raised cows and pigs on a farm, just like what you were saying when he was young, and he would go to the auction for the cow that he had gotten really friends with, and pigs and everything, and he would look around at age 10 and see all the other little boys hiding back tears. They all were crying. But we live in a herding, hoarding, and hurting species of society, so he got used to it. And then at a certain point, he went to a farm sanctuary, the one in Watkins Glen, Gene Bauer. And this cow recognized him from the year before. You give a certain amount of money and it's like your cow. And so this cow recognized him and came running up towards him and just kind of nuzzled him in the chest. And he said it pulled up a switch on his heart where he realized this being is like me, loves me, I love her. And he stopped eating meat, dairy, and eggs after that. We do grow up, and I really commend you and your farm that you do take such care of the animals. But not only that, you said on the last day of their lives, you're with them in such a way as to not produce fear in them. And it's truly commendable. And I produced the films that you described of the slaughterhouse, the factory farms. So I do know I've seen them chewing on the bars. As my son said, going insane. There's a film besides Peaceable Kingdom called Cowspiracy. Leonardo DiCaprio is promoting that film on Netflix. It's a regular hour and a half. Cowspiracy, they show farms like this as well with the children, and he says, well, don't you get attached? And we try not to name them because we do get attached. But the fact of the matter is, farms like these, if everybody did that, it would not... It's not sustainable. Animal agriculture produces 293 times the amount of global warming, that's methane and nitrous oxide gases, from farts, belches, poops, etc. Then all the cars, trucks, power plants, and carbon dioxide. Your children, the United Nations gave us 12 more years of a sustainable planet, and then we're headed towards the edge of that cliff. So that's the second reason. Animal agriculture is not sustainable in even the short run. So first is compassion, second is sustainability, and third is health. According to the majority of doctors who've read the data, like Kim Williams, he's president of the Cardiologists of America. He said there's cardiologists who are vegan. There's only two groups, cardiologists who are vegan and cardiologists who just haven't read the data.
So like I said, there's differences of opinion, and I don't want to argue with you, but
it's not his opinion. He's a cardiologist.
I know there's many cardiologists who have
making a lot of money.
Would argue the opposite. So also the point about animal agriculture being unsustainable. I don't know if you know about the work of Alan Savory. But there's his data, or there's agriculture has caused a lot of issues, but can also, right now with global warming, it's one of the ways that if we sequester the carbon through appropriate agriculture, including animal agriculture, that's one way to keep the carbon out of the atmosphere and to slow global warming.
1 acre a second is being destroyed of
Alan
the rainforest.
Savory recommended killing of elephants in Africa as a way to forestall deforestation, and they found that was not productive, and African elements
are... That was a mistake. That was before he came up with his current method. He admits from the start, if you read his book, that was before he realized anything and knew anything. So that's one of his regrets, especially with the elephants.
Well, I've heard that many scientists who've looked at his data found that there's no foundings. There's no founding. It's not sustainable. It doesn't make farming sustainable just by having animals graze on it. In fact, it leads to more desertification when you overgraze a smaller area, even though they're trying to claim the opposite. But it's a side point, right?
Yeah.
Dr. Robert Oppenlander in Cowspiracy. Just for your own, if you want your children to have a planet to live on. It might be that the Food and Agricultural Report of the United Nations, called the Livestock's Long Shadow, may be totally incorrect and we don't know what we're talking about, just an opinion. But if it's not, and there's a chance that animal agriculture is producing methane and nitrous oxide gases and destroying our planet, if it's a chance that your children and you and your wife are eating foods that are clogging your arteries, it's just something to think about, and that's all we urge. Is we just want to offer the possibility that you might consider it. Maybe not now or in a year. A lot of farms have seen the look on the eyes of the goats that are taken away to slaughter, or the cows, and they've turned into, there's Rowdy Girl Sanctuary, she just went, what are we doing? She had a whole field of cows, her husband, and they raised enough money to take all these cows off of the slaughter list and make a sanctuary. More and more sanctuaries. Strongest man in the world, vegan, Patrick Baumblum in Germany, pulls a whole car. Fastest person in the world, Scott Jurek, vegan. A lot of athletes, Richard Roll, these NBA players, Jefferson, McGee, Lillard.
Depends on, everybody's different and everybody has different requirements. There's as many people who were vegan who had health issues because of being vegan, because of the, not having enough healthy fats and having hormonal issues. It seems like the first couple of years of being vegan, people do really well, mostly because they change their diet from not eating whole foods to eating whole foods. But then, certain people may continue to do really well in it. Other people, it doesn't work for me. I was a vegan. I was macrobiotic.
How many years?
Well, for 5 years in college, and I came back. And after people hadn't seen me for a while, and I thought I looked and felt great, and people were like, oh my God, do you have cancer? And then I started to eat differently. I started to eat meat again. And for me, I felt healthier. I felt better.
That's why they said you have cancer?
My eyes were sunken. My hair was really dry and brittle. I was having trouble sleeping. I had temperature issues. I get really cold all the time.
When did you decide to go vegan?
I read a book.
Which one was it?
I was really focused on health and nutrition. I was a runner, an athlete, and I lifted, I did all that kind of stuff. And it was actually a book on macrobiotics, and then I looked at some more veganism stuff. Although it was probably more vegetarian than vegan. But for a period of time, I was just eating.
People say dairy is even more.
But see, that it depends on your genetics. It depends on where you came from, where your people came from. There's whole cultures that dairy is the mainstay of their diet, and they do very well. My people, Germanic people, we came from a culture that had a lot of dairy, and I do well on it. I have no problem with it whatsoever.
So you know it has natural growth hormones that make the baby cow grow very fast in nature.
I've read all that, and I was a science teacher for years and years, a biology teacher, and very interested in health. I was a coach and all that kind of stuff. So I read all that, and I just have a different take on it.
So the main thing that I perceive is violence towards another that is not necessary. Is it okay?
I didn't agree to this line of questioning, okay? I'm willing to have shared our farm with you. I'm not willing to have my choices be questioned.
Thank you, Jim, for showing this.
I don't want to be confrontational. I'm just saying it's like...
And we could just start walking out.
I'm not asking you to leave. It's just like, let's put the camera away.